Go to search and type portal.azure.com. Okay, and then enter. You might need to sign in or sign up. Once you have signed in, a portal will open where all the services of Azure will be there. Once the portal opens, click on search and type here resource and click on resource groups. Resource group is actually a logical container for managing related Azure resources. By grouping resources with the same lifecycle, you can easily deploy, update, and delete them as a single unit. Click on Create, enter the resource group name, and that will be Azure UAE North RG. Next, select the region. You have to select the region which is closest to you. And since UAE North is closest to me, so I will select this region. But otherwise, you can select any of these regions which is closest to you. Okay, next. Now these are the tags. Tags act like sticky notes for your resources. They actually help identify, organize, and manage costs efficiently. Tags in Azure are key value pairs. This is the key and this is the value, okay, that you attach to resources, and they help in organizing resources. I will just leave it as it is and click on next and click on create. Once the resource group is created, again go to search and type here storage and click here storage accounts. Click create storage account. Now you can see a resource group and select the resource group which we created. Next, for the storage account name, let's give it a name Azure UAE North and ST for storage account, okay, and the region will be UAE North. Preferred storage type. When creating a storage account, Azure lets us pick the storage type based on our needs. Let's say we have the unstructured files like videos or logs, or we have to perform analytics or big data pipelines. Then we will select the blob storage or Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. And if we need a shared network drive in the cloud, then we will select Azure Files. And if we have lightweight apps or messaging, then we will select the tables and queues. But in this project, since we are working with data in files and folder structure, we will go with blob storage. Next is performance, and we are given two options, standard or premium. Premium is basically for the scenarios which require low latency, but we will select the standard, and this is basically for most scenarios, as you can see here. Next is redundancy. In Azure, redundancy means how many copies of your data are kept and where. So there are four types: LRS, locally redundant storage; GRS, geo-redundant storage; ZRS, zone redundant storage; GZRS, geo-zone redundant storage. I will explain what each of these means. So LRS, locally redundant storage, keeps 3 copies in one data center, and it is the cheapest but least resilient. Next is GRS. GRS only adds geo-replication. What it does is it adds another 3 copies in a paired region. Next, zone redundant storage, ZRS. It spreads data across 3 zones in the same region. So what is the difference between LRS and ZRS? LRS stores 3 copies in one data center in the same region, and ZRS spreads data in 3 zones in the same region. Last is GZRS, Geo-Zone Redundant Storage. It combines both GRS and ZRS. and it is the most expensive option too. So we will go with GRS, Geo Redundant Storage. Next, now here's the security configurations. First is require secure transfer for REST API operations. If we turn this on, our storage account will only accept secure HTTPS connections, and it will make sure that all data is encrypted when moving in and out. If we leave it off, apps could still connect over unencrypted HTTP connections, which is a security risk too. So for the best practice, we will keep it enabled and allow enabling anonymous access on individual containers. If this is turned on, we can make some containers public, meaning anyone with a link can read the data like images or files for a website. And if it's off, all containers require authentication and stay private. And we will keep this disabled, but if you're hosting public files, you might enable it for just those containers. But beware that if anyone has the link, then they will have access to all the data. Okay, and next is enable storage key access. So when you enable it, you allow applications and users to authenticate to the storage account using one of its access keys. Let's say you want to send data from your Azure storage account into Power BI to build a dashboard. And to do that, Power BI needs to connect to the storage account. And one way to authenticate that connection is by using a storage account access key. And if this key is enabled, you can copy the access key from Azure and use it to connect Power BI to your Azure storage account, allowing it to read the data. But this is risky too, because if the key leaks, someone could take full control of the data. Next option is default to Microsoft Entra authorization in the Azure portal. If we enable this option, Azure portal will use our Entra ID roles to control access to the storage account instead of relying on the storage keys. This is more secure, but since we have already enabled storage account key access, we will leave it disabled. Next is minimum TLS version. TLS here means transport layer security, and it is the encryption protocol that protects our data while it's being transferred. Older versions like version 1.0 and version 1.1 are outdated and insecure. So the best practice is always to set this to version 1.2. Next is permitted scope for copy operations. Let's set it to from any storage account. Next is hierarchical namespace, and this is very important. Okay, because enabling this option will make our storage account into our data lake storage gen 2. And if we enable this hierarchical namespace, the storage account works more like a real file system with folders and directories. Azure Storage also gives us the option to enable SFTP. And what this does is this allows the storage account to work more like an SFTP server. So we can securely upload and download files using standard SFTP clients. Next option is enable network file system v3. This allows us to mount our storage account directly on Linux systems, so applications can read and write data as if it were a local file system. It's basically useful for big data or machine learning workloads. And both of these options require hierarchical namespace to be enabled. For example, if I disable it, then none of these options would be enabled. So the next is blob storage. Allow cross-tenant replication. What this means is, if we enable this, we can replicate data across storage accounts that belong to different organizations. This is useful when you want to share data with a partner company or replicate data to another tenant for backup. But it also requires careful security control. So you would only enable it if you truly need cross-organization replication. Next is access tier. It defines how often you expect to access the data and on what pricing. And there are three tiers: hot, cool, and cold. Cold is also known as archive tier. So hot is the most expensive one here, and cold is the most least expensive. Hot is for data you use frequently, is fastest but costs more to store, and is basically for analytics. Cool is for data you access less often, like monthly reports, and it is cheaper to store but more expensive to access. And finally, cold. Cold is for rarely accessed data, like historical data. It is cheapest to store, but it takes time, a lot of time to extract the data. Okay, and since we will be doing analytics on data, so we will select here hot tier. Next is enable large file shares. It is enabled by default. Next. Now this is the networking category, and the first option is public network access, and there are three options: enable, disable, or secure by parameter. And what it does is it controls how clients connect to your storage account, and enabling it means anyone with the right keys or tokens can connect from the internet. Disable will mean that only private endpoints can reach storage, and secure by parameter is the most restricted option. And what it means is it allows access only from trusted networks or Microsoft services. And next is public network access scope. This comes into play if you choose enable for public network access. And enable from all networks makes your storage reachable from anywhere on the internet as long as users have the right credentials. And enable from selected virtual networks and IP addresses. What it does is you allow access only from trusted IP ranges or Azure VNets. VNets is virtual networks. For example, you could limit access to just your company's office network. And this is private endpoint, and it lets you connect your storage account directly into your virtual network with a private IP address. And in order to add private endpoint, you will need a virtual network too. Next option is network routing preference. When your storage account is publicly accessed, you choose how requests are routed between clients and Azure. With Microsoft Network Routing, data travels through Microsoft's private backbone network, giving us lower latency, more consistent speed, and better security. With Internet routing, data goes over the public internet, which is cheaper but less secure and can have higher latency. For this project, since we want better performance and reliability, we will go with Microsoft Network Routing. Next, now this is the data protection options. The first option is enable point-in-time restore for containers. If we enable it, we can roll back a blob container to an earlier state. For example, before someone accidentally deleted or overwrite files, Azure keeps versions and logs of changes for our retention period we set, up to 365 days. This is useful for protecting against accidents or corruption, but it also increases costs. And one thing to note here is that this option and hierarchical namespace option cannot be enabled at the same time. For instance, if I enable it, then you can see point-in-time restore and hierarchical namespace cannot be enabled simultaneously. So we will keep it disabled. Next three options enable soft delete for blobs, containers, and file shares. These are same things. And if we enable it for blobs, containers, or file shares, deleted data isn't gone right away. It's kept for a certain number of days. Minimum is 1 day. And for example, if I say 0, then you can see here 1 and 365. So I will just say here 7 days. And during that time, we can easily restore it if someone deletes or overrides something by mistake. It's basically a recycle bin for Azure storage. Okay, and the next option is tracking. Enable versioning for blobs. If we enable this option, then whenever we update or overwrite a blob, Azure saves the old copy as a version. That way, if we make a mistake or override something important, we can go back to a previous version and restore it. And this is different from soft deletes, which protects against accidental deletions. Versioning protects against accidental changes or overrides. Also remember that costs do increase if files change frequently, as Azure will be storing old versions too. Next option is enable blob change feed. If we enable it, what Azure will do is Azure automatically writes a log of every blob event, whether a file was added, updated, or deleted. This log is stored in a system container. Final option in data protection is enable version level immutability support. If we enable it, we can lock specific blob versions so they cannot be changed or deleted until a retention period we choose. For example, 7 years. This is especially useful for compliance scenarios in industries like banking or healthcare, where records must be preserved exactly as they were. So click on Next. Next is encryption. Azure Storage Account encrypts all data at rest, but we can choose the encryption type. With Microsoft Managed Keys, this option, Azure handles everything automatically, and this is used for most scenarios. And with customer managed keys, we bring our own keys from Azure Key Vault, giving us more control and compliance for sensitive data. And the next option is enable support for customer managed keys. And there are two options, blobs and files only, or all services types. If we enable customer managed keys, Azure asks where to apply them. We can pick blobs and files only or all service types, which includes blobs, files, tables, and queues. If we only need compliance for file data, the first option is enough. But if we want full coverage across every service in the account, so then we would go with the second option. Next option is enable infrastructure encryption. And if we enable this option, we add a second layer of encryption, and this is called double encryption and is mainly used for very sensitive workloads like finance or governments. For most projects, standard encryption is enough, but for highly regulated industries, this option gives stronger protection, and we will keep it disabled. Next, tags. Next, once the validation completes, you can see here is the options which we selected, and click on create. Once the deployment is completed, we will have to select where our data will be moving to. So click on go to resource, and you can see here are a lot of options like data lake, storage, security, and in the left menu there are overview, activity log, tags, data migration, events, storage. But you have to go to the containers under the data storage. Click on it and add container, and this will be our raw data container, and click on create. And again click on add container, and this time it will be transformed data. Now raw data is where our initial data will be coming to, and for that purpose we have to build a pipeline to move on-premises data to Azure cloud, which we will do in the next part.